Welcome back. You're watching Trade of the Week with me, Zinati Kuma. Today we bring you a technical analysis on British American Tobacco, MTN and Multichoice. And joining me for that is Petri, Redelinghuys, founder of Herenya Capital. Thank you so much for your time, Petri. I know that these stocks are probably not election trading trades, but just on the back of elections, has anything changed in terms of how you're trading, particularly SA Inc. stocks, the rand? And actually, when I was thinking back to the last time you were here, you actually bought the dollar instead of the rand. And I was like, okay, well, smart, because we did have a weakening of the rand.
That one worked quite well.
Yeah. Has there anything changed in terms of how you're positioning yourself, or is everything working the way that you had predicted?
Well, I think we only really saw, I guess, a finalization of the results this weekend. So how that is now, interpreted or accepted by the market is still to be seen.
Yeah.
So for today, we're not really making any big moves. Still sitting with a large amount of cash and still very risk averse, if that makes sense. So I think, though, the next few steps here is to see how the market takes, or at least what type of coalition is going to come up with. There's
and
a number of different scenarios, right? So, do we see an ANC and DA coalition forming? Do we see an ANC EFF MK coalition forming one of the two? Do we see a minority party sort of coalition forming? Do we see a completely shared government?
Yes.
There's a number of different scenarios, a number of different ways that could play out, and we don't really know which it will be. And only once we actually have a fair idea of what the actual government and cabinet is going to look like, at that point, I think the market will, I guess, draw favorites.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, is what the market is most concerned about is, policy stability and governance issues. I mean, there's been an enormous, call it corruption problem in the past.
Yep.
So can we stem that, and how much confidence does the market have in whatever government is formed that corruption problem is going to come to an end? Because truly that is the biggest problem that we have in South Africa.
Yeah. And if we can even keep the integrity of our institutions.
Yeah, and I mean, we have wonderful policy, we have wonderful laws, we have wonderful constitution. We just can't enforce them. Yeah. Right? That's the problem.
Implementation problem.
And if we can get past that hurdle, I think then we're in a good space. And I think the primary focus here really is just how much what focus, how much faith do we have in whatever government is formed over the next couple of days, and that will take a few days. I think the ANC NEC met yesterday. There's a bunch of meetings happening today. There's some talk that they're in talks with the EFF at the moment, the ANC and EFF. So we'll see what the outcome is and how that works out for the market. In the interim, there are some opportunities I think that we'll talk about today. They're not really as sort of, let's call them, reactionary to election. They're kind of independent of that.
Yes.
Last week, I think we played it quite, well, not last week, 2 weeks ago, we played it quite well, essentially hedging our bets with the rand. Going into the election, that seemed to be a fairly good trade. Yeah. So I'm not keen to touch the rand from here again for the next little while, simply because we don't know. If we see a worst case scenario coalition form, it's going to be really bad for the rand. If we see a best case scenario, it's going to be really good for the rand. So it's a bit unpredictable at this stage. I think we also spoke about BHP Billiton and Anglos.
We did, yes.
And the probability or the chance that deal is going to be off.
And
deal's off, right? So Anglos came to a screeching halt. Billiton didn't really react as positively as I would have imagined it to, but at least I wasn't the bag holder on Anglos. Right?
All right. Well, let's go into the trades that you have for us today. Starting off with the British American Tobacco.
Okay.
They want to create a smokeless world.
It seems paradoxical. We're all going to vape. Look, I'll admit I used to smoke for a long time. I don't anymore. But smokers are smokers. It's a tough habit to quit. And I think what happens is companies like British American Tobacco, et al., all the others, they're moving very quickly into this vape type sort of market that's being created. So much so that we see vape companies are sponsoring Formula One teams. So at what point do we see the traditional tobacco firms start buying up the vape firms? I think at some point it'll probably happen. But there's the sin stocks, as they're called, alcohol and tobacco. they do well in good times because people are happy and celebrate, and they do well in bad times because people drown their sorrows and try and make themselves feel better. So good times, bad times, the sin stocks perform well.
But not so much in the US, because they've been talking about macroeconomic headwinds there. There was even an impairment last year.
Yeah, I think, what's happening, I think, is that the general, a number of things. The youth, those that do smoke, I guess, are more into vaping.
Yes.
But for the most part, they're a bit healthier than what our generation is.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course. You even see it with the alcohol. That's why these companies like AB and Bev creating those seltzers with less alcohol as
exactly,
well
because people,
Gen Z.
the Gen Z kids are just healthier, which is fantastic, actually. We shouldn't be complaining. Look, that aside, technical analysis is what we're here for. British American Tobacco, what we have here is, if you have a look at the chart, I've got a 200-day moving average and a 20-day moving average on here. So the thick blue line here being the 200-day moving average. As we can see, that's a wonderful trend indicator. Historically, it's done really well to show us whether or not, sorry, your internet's a bit slow here, so the loading times is a bit long.
Yeah.
But as we can see here, that we've broken above that trend line for the first time in a long while. So here we were sort of dancing around it as that trend changed it down. And I think that dance around it is now starting as we potentially see this trend change higher. So for the trend following longer term swing trader, position trader, somebody who doesn't mind sitting in a trade for a year or two, this is probably a good time to get on board with this trend. So yes, as we know, economic headwinds has made everything more expensive, and those that are already health conscious now have a great reason to stop smoking. But I don't think that people are going to stop smoking in such large numbers that it's going to make too much of a difference to the tobacco guys, right? They're going to keep making a huge amount of money, and I think that this is a good opportunity to get into the trend
at this point
for the longer term.
All right. What about MTN? I don't know if anybody thinks of MTN in terms of a longer term investing, or if a majority of the market, or if it's just a trading stock, because there's so much volatility there.
Yeah, and also it's been in a tremendously strong downtrend for quite some time now. I mean, as we can see here, it's been downtrending, and this is just looking at sort of a year and a bit's worth of data. It's been trending down, for a very, very long time.
Yes.
So we can see again our trend indicator here being the 200-day moving average, very much in a downward sloping trend. We are, however, buying it because, hey, we like risk. Essentially what we're doing here is we're trading off of this support level here. So we've got a very strongly established trend where we see lower highs consistently and lower lows, right? So there's a high, there's a low, that high is below that one, that low is below that one, and so it goes, and that forms a trend. And for the first time in a while, we're starting to see the 80 Rand level putting up a bit of support, right? So it smashed into the level, couldn't quite stay below it, tried a second time, didn't even reach the third time. So we're thinking
so it's like a bottom.
So we're thinking this could potentially be a triple bottom formation that's happening here. And that gives you a good trade if you wanted to take, I'm sure you've noticed, I'm a big fan of those high probability setups, right?
Yeah.
So I like to be able to take very small amount of risk and to take, for as much sort of potential upside as possible, right? Let me just do this.
You talk about, what's that, a triple
bottom formation, yes.
Formation.
Yeah, so basically what's happened there is the price has hit the same level 3 times. So it's not, let me just draw in this thing. So that would be the trade there, for example. So you have essentially, our entry point would probably be around there now. So you've got essentially a risk-reward ratio of 1 to 3. Which is fantastic, right? So for every Rand you risk, you're potentially going to make 3 Rand. So that's a good trade.
Okay.
If you win 50% of those, you're still making a large amount of profit, right? So that's the kind of trade that we want to be taking. So essentially the triple bottom formation, this isn't exactly a textbook one. A textbook one would be that if it hit this 80 Rand level 3 times, you could call this a double bottom, right? Because essentially it's hit 80 Rand, it's hit 80 Rand again. Once it breaks this high, it's also known as a W formation. Then you have essentially this this situation happening here. I'm going to draw a bunch of lines for you.
Okay. So would this triple bottom formation then be a really good indicator of a kind of
Well, it generally is
Turning of direction.
is a sort of a turning formation, right? So it's generally the indication that, so that would be a W formation,
Yes.
right? So that would be the double bottom formation. But what we're essentially sitting here with now is something that looks a bit more like this.
Okay.
Right, so we've got
I see it.
Essentially 3 bottoms. So now so we're hitting that bottom 3 times, or the top 3 times. So these are essentially indicative of significant levels in the market. So at 80 Rand, it seems that institutional money is stepping into the market and buying up whatever they can at that price. So we say that that's a support level and a level at which the smart money starts to get involved and starts buying. So for us, or from a technical perspective at least, that would be a trend turning indicator. So you could then use that 80 Rand level as your stop loss and say, look, if it breaks through there and closes the day below that, then we know that that level is no longer valid because it couldn't be held. So that's our stop loss. If we see this level of 98 break, then it's very likely that we probably see a move from, I'm going to draw another line here. It's very likely that we probably can measure this move and project that out as a target, right? So if you do an extended target on this, you could probably go all the way up there, which increases your risk reward to 1 to 6. So what you might want to do is take a long position here, put half of it on take profit at $100 and the other half on take profit at 117 Rand. So and then you stop out at 79. So that would be a good trade. Keep in mind, this trade is probably going to take a couple of weeks to a couple of months to play out, but it is a relatively high probability.
So you'd still need some patience.
You still need some patience. I mean, I think what a lot of people do and I guess we're kind of switching in the educational stuff as we go here.
Yes.
I think what a lot of people do with trading is they get very impatient. They want the results now, immediately. I want to know if I'm right or wrong. By the end of the day, I want to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that, right? It takes sometimes a long time for trades to work out. I'll give you an example. The other pick that we have for today is
MultiChoice.
MultiChoice, right? I wanted to do life healthcare because we're essentially, buying a bit more of it, if you want. But we've done it already in the past and haven't really taken profit on it just yet.
Okay.
We have to be a bit patient with the internet as well.
All right.
But in any case, like these things take a long while to work out. Look at that Rand trade, for example.
Yeah.
It took 2 weeks. It hasn't really hit the target yet. So theoretically, or technically, there's nothing for you to actually do here. Adjust your stop loss higher. So if the Rand strengthens a bunch, you can lock in your profit. That's what you can do. But until then, it's been 2 weeks, and only now really is it well. Over the last, I want to say, week or so, has it really worked very well. But look at this life healthcare chart, for example. This was something that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. And you can see how each one of these being a day. So there's a number of weeks there. I mean, this was essentially the beginning of May. We're now in the beginning of June. It's like a month later.
Okay.
And we're still in this trade, right?
Yes.
And I think that once we break above this resistance level here at 1156 or 1160, then we might have a little bit more upside, but we'll get there. So MultiChoice was one that we also spoke about before. And the trade here was on the buyout of Canal Plus, right? And that offer has now been finalized at 125 Rand. The trade at the time was, I think, the break of this 105 level. Once the internet loads, there you go. Was the break of this 105 level, and the target was 123 because we were a bit conservative. Never quite made it there, but it came relatively close enough. We have ended up banking our profits and taking essentially the money. What you could do is you could just essentially wait for the takeout. At some point the deal gets settled.
Yes.
And whatever stock you have, they buy from you at 125 Rand a share. And because it's being taken out in corporate action, there's no brokerage paid on the out leg. You only pay the brokerage on the buy, and then the buyer in this group, Canal Plus, so they cover the brokerage on the leg out, right? So here we have a situation where they say there's no such thing as free money, and yet there is. The stock is trading at 114 Rand and 10 cents as we speak, and the takeout price is at 100 and...
Actually, why has it been such a slog to get to 125? Because when the first offer came, I think it was, 95 Rand?
People are impatient.
It went...
People are impatient. That's really it. So you could probably buy it at 114 here. And just know, you lock your money in until the deal is settled. But there's 11 Rand per share to be made here for nothing.
Okay.
They say there's no such thing as a free lunch. Sometimes there is, right? It's free money.
Yeah. We offer free lunch on the business lunch show. I mean.
But the thing is here, for example, you can make, say, 10% here, right? Or just a bit less than 10%, say 9% return, in a relatively short period of time. But from a trading perspective, maybe there's somewhere else I can make better return on my capital in the same period of time. So maybe it's fine for me to get out now. But we see this happening regularly with these takeout things. There's a huge amount of excitement. They run up to the price, they hover around there, and then eventually they start to drift down. They don't always drift down as far as this one has, but we've got a decent gap in here, $11 in it, just over or just under 10%.
Yeah.
So, you know, take the free money, buy some MultiChoice and wait for the takeout offer. It'll take you out at 125.
When are they finalizing everything? Has anything been clear on that?
No, not yet. So we're not 100% sure on dates and stuff yet. So you might be stuck in this for the next, you know, who knows how long. But
but you must just be patient.
But the risk of this deal not going through at this stage is extremely low, right? So odds are extremely high that you're going to be taken out at 125.
Which is interesting because, I mean, when it came, there was lots of talk about the regulations, particularly looking at the fact that Canal Plus is not a South African company.
Look, South African government is going to want things like, you know, BE compliance and that kind of stuff.
So there's certain conditions at least
that need to be met, right? And I think that if you are Canal Plus and you've gone this far down the road and made so many aggressive things, you know that that's part of the deal, so you're prepared for it, right? And I don't think that I don't think that at this point, regulatory issues that might come up, I think Canal Plus are going to say, okay, well, how do we address them? How do we get over them? How do we make this deal go through? I don't think they're going to say, oh, well, okay, the deal's off because the regulator's giving us a hard time. I think they'd rather say, all right, fine, the regulator's giving us a hard time. Let's find a way to work with the regulator, stick to whatever rules or adhere to whatever rules they might have for us, and we make this deal go through. So that's kind of, or at least my perception of it.
I mean, you can tell that they're very confident in this thing going through because every week we're getting updates that they're buffing up their stake in MultiChoice. But anyway, we shall see what happens, I guess, in the next few months or so. Thank you so much for that, Petri. Appreciate it. That was founder of Herenya Capital, Petri Redelinghuys.